What's up, guys? Recently got myself access to Alpha, so I've been messing around on that, playing with different talents and trying different stuff, and just looking at the direction that they decided to take Holy Paladin. And I thought I'd make a video kind of discussing some of those things and my initial thoughts. Just a warning that this is still pretty early alpha, so a lot of this is going to change between now and then. And I try to come from the point of view of, um, if it were to release like within the next week, where would Holy Paladin stand, right? I'm also going to try to put timestamps in the description for talking points so you can skip around to see the different stuff you might be interested in personally. Paladin. Starting off with the class changes, the biggest thing is obviously going to be the reintroduction of Holy Power, which changes how you use your abilities and how you heal. Later in the video, I'm going to give you some more in-depth discussion on Holy Power and why I like about it and what I don't like about it. On top of Holy Power, we also saw the changes to auras. Devo got reworked so that it's no longer 20% when you use Aura Mastery, and it's getting changed down to 15%. However, they're changing how the minimum portion of Devo works. So instead of just metering off and giving very low percentage once you have like 20 people, it's giving a baseline of 3% minimum. So it's actually kind of a big buff to the constant damage reduction of Devo, which makes up a large portion of damage reduction overall. We also gained a couple new auras, the first one being a movement speed increase. The second was when an ally dies, you will get like, I believe it's 8 seconds on your first rank of it, and the second rank gives you 12 seconds of wings whenever someone dies. And the third aura was pretty much just an aura that silences slash interrupts or prevents interrupts. So kind of only useful in PvP situations, I guess. Or maybe I think there's a raid mechanic that silences, so that could be good there. But none of them really sound super good for raiding outside of potentially like the extra wings whenever someone dies, but you'd have to swap off Diva to get that benefit, so that interaction might feel kind of like clunky. So I think the big question that everyone's trying to figure out and wants to know about is if Glimmer is dead, and I think the short answer is kind of, it's like, it's not fully dead, but it's not looking great for Glimmer. I think late in the expansion, Glimmer could potentially be really good with the scaling of stats and increases in eye levels and stuff like that. But early on, you're going to have very little secondaries and raw stats overall, so I don't think Glimmer is going to be very good. Current spell coefficient is very low, and it's about on par with a Rejuve. It's slightly bigger than a Rejuve, which is not good. It's also equivalent to wearing about one Azurite trait of Glimmer in BFA, and it's about 10% higher than that. So if you just take off 2 of your Azurite pieces and you only have 1 left of Glimmer, that's what it would feel like, and it would be slightly better than that. I think actually in Mythic Plus, Glimmer might still be used on dungeons that are easy to heal, just because it provides damage, right? Glimmer still does a bit of damage when you Holy Shock enemies, and none of the other talents in that row really are going to provide you the same thing. I think it's going to be tough to fill the Glimmer Void, and it's definitely going to be a change of playstyle potentially, but I think you're mainly going to look to go towards like Beacon of Faith for raiding to replace Glimmer, just because it's always been a solid talent, but it kind of got pushed out of the meta. BFA, I mean, when Glimmer was created in BFA, just because you took all the talents and standardized with Glimmer. And it also plays well with Holy Power generation. Since healing a target with Beacon generates Holy Power, I think that always having that target to go to, and I guess 2 targets with Faith, sorry, to go to generate your Holy Power and increase not only your damage but your healing. Those, I think that could be pretty strong. I think there's maybe some dungeons with like tough debuffs or really tough healing. The Beacon of Faith might be good. Virtue is interesting because on Alpha right now, a lot of the fights and a lot of the trash mobs you'll see in the video are really overtuned. They do a shit ton of damage, and I felt like that I could not keep up the raid sometimes unless I was playing Beacon of Virtue. I think that's going to stay. I think that's probably tech packs and bosses are going to be tuned down shortly, but early on, Virtue feels like mandatory. And it feels kind of weird because you can't activate, like, generate Holy Power without a Beacon, right? Like, that mechanic doesn't exist with Virtue unless you have Virtue active. So, with Virtue being like a 15-second cooldown for like 7 or 8 of seconds of those 15s, assuming you're using it 100% off cooldown, you're not able to generate Holy Power off of healing your allies, which I don't know how that's going to feel. I don't really do a lot of high-end Mythic Plus. I kind of just do my 15, 16, 17s, 18s for my weeklies and call it there. But in Mythic Plus, is definitely something to keep in mind is that you can't get that consistent Holy Power generation, which obviously you want that Holy Power because you want that DPS. Because you have obviously Shield of the Righteousness as a spender. How do you went over? So just looking at Holy Power overall, I think I'm kind of a fan of it. I think it adds decision making to the spec, which the spec has kind of lacked since Glimmer became meta back in, I guess, the end of BOD. And I've always been a fan of like the more choices the player has to make, the higher the skill cap, and the more like the easier it is to improve. And then also it comes down to like if you want to maximize your healing, you have to make better choices. So it's like the better choices you make, the better the healing is, which is obviously going back to that skill cap. Point. I think my number one complaint about Holy Power though is the spenders. Like they currently just don't feel like they're doing enough on Alpha. Like when I press Word of Glory or Light of Dawn, I feel like they should feel impactful because of the resources required to use them. Like if I invest 3 GCDs into generating that Holy Power, and then I press that Word of Glory expecting it to do like this a significant, not even a significant, but a noticeable amount of healing on the tank, and I just see their HP bar not even move, then it's like, well, fuck me, right? I just wasted all those like all those resources and I didn't get anything noticeable out of it. Like you should notice the healing and you should feel it on people's health bars when you press a spender. And right now, it doesn't even feel like it's worth to press the spender in a lot of cases. Like if you watch it and you watch close to when I Word of Glory, it doesn't even move their HP bar unless it crits, and even then, it's barely changing it. I don't know if that's because of funky scaling, just because we're not max level yet, but it does not feel good right now. And as far as damage spenders go, you only have one, which is Shield of the Righteousness, and that feels pretty good on AoE, but on single target, it feels like it does fucking nothing. And I don't think they should add a single target spender, because then at that point you're just having even more buttons. And I've already noticed just going to alpha that the number of buttons I have now is going to need to increase going from BFA to Shadowlands. So I don't think they're wanting to add more binds. I don't think that's the play. I think maybe adding something like an effect where if you only use it on 1 or 2 targets, it increases the damage done of Shield of the Righteousness. I think that would be pretty cool. I don't know. I don't actually think they're going to do that at all, to be fair, but I think that would be a good design. Like the more targets, the damage gets splintered. But then on like single target and or 2 target, it does like it feels worth to press because right now it does fucking nothing. It feels like it does like half a judgment. Looking at covenants, I think that this is probably another thing that people are super curious about. We don't have access to all of them yet, so kind of just guessing on what we think will be good and what we think will be fun. The 4 covenants are obviously Kyrian, Vinther, Necro Lord, Nightfey. I probably did not pronounce all of those correctly, but try my best. For Kyrian, you get Divine Toll, which instantly casts Holy Shock on 5 targets on a 1-minute cooldown. I think this one could potentially be really good, especially later on in the expansion, where I think Glimmer could potentially rise with increased stats. I think Divine Toll, which is 5 Holy Shocks, you trigger 5 Glimmers on, like, let's say you get 8 Glimmers out on your raid, right, with Wings, then you press Divine Toll. That is a shit ton of burst healing that I think will be really fucking good. But I don't know how good it's going to be early on with Glimmer not being viable. It's definitely going to be a solid button to press, but on a 1-minute cooldown, I don't know. I don't know how good it is without Glimmer. I would have to like test it more, which I obviously haven't had a lot of time to do yet. I wanted to get this video up early just to get my thoughts. Another issue with Divine Toll is that we aren't sure how its targeting works yet. Early on, we found they could also target enemies, which makes sense, but we don't know how it prioritizes. Like, let's say, for example, you have, let's say 4 allies in range of you. I'm just throwing out numbers. 4 allies in range of you and 3 enemies, and use Divine Toll. How does it split those 5 Holy Shocks? Is it going to split randomly and just do like 3 on the enemies and 2 on the allies? Because that's not going to be ideal. Like, unless you were using it specifically for damage. I think hopefully it would have a mechanic like if you use it on an ally, it prioritizes allies, but it also if you use it on an enemy and it prioritizes enemies, that way it could be useful in Mythic Plus and Raid and just giving healing and damage. I think that'd be sick, but we haven't got to test it yet. Or I guess other people have. I haven't really been able to test it yet. The next covenant is Venthyr, which gains Ashen Hollow. I think this is my least favorite one by far. This one just does not sound good. It does not look good. I don't think it's going to be useful at all. You drop a Consecrate like ability on the ground that will heal your allies in it for 12 seconds. It has a 4-minute cooldown. It will also leave behind a pool that damages enemies. I really don't think it's going to be good, like I said. Main reason being that you need to be stacked up, which is not always going to happen in Raid. It's definitely not going to happen in Mythic Plus. And then on top of that, you want the enemies to stay inside of it for a minute, because it leaves behind a pool that damages enemies for a minute. That's not really feasible in Mythic Plus, and in Raid it's definitely not going to happen all the time. So I think it's just it's just not going to happen in Raid. Like, that's the big thing. You're not going to have 100% uptime in Raid. The next one is a Necro Lord, which gains Vanquisher's Hammer. I think this is a tight race for first place in my eyes. This one seems super cool on paper. So you throw down a hammer that deals deals damage and empowers your next Word of Glory to also cast Light of Dawn. Has a 30-second cooldown. So basically every 30 seconds you get a free Light of Dawn, which isn't bad. And I would kind of like to see it on a shorter cooldown, but I need to play with it first and see how it flows in the rotation. On paper, it sounds like it's a cool ability you can weave in once in a while, and it will I don't know, it just feels cool. I was gonna say it was gonna change your rotation, but it's not really gonna do that. It's kind of like you press it, you Word of Glory instead of maybe Light of Dawning, and then you get 2 for 1, which is definitely cool. It's definitely super efficient, but I'm not sure how it's gonna be on the cool. I think it's gonna be. I like it though. Like, I like adding abilities that are on like mid-tier or cooldowns to the rotation. So not something you have to constantly press, something that you can press every once in a while. And then I think Night Phase is by far the most interesting, because it has the most potential, and it could also it could be the best one by far, and it could be the worst one by far. So you gain Aura of Seasons, and that's an aura that cycles through just 4 different sub-auras. You have Summer, which causes party members to have a chance to deal holy damage. You have Autumn, which makes party members' cooldowns recover 1% faster. Winter, which slows enemy movement speed by 20% and their attack speed by 10%. And Spring, which increases party members' healing done and healing received by 10%. You cycle through these sub-auras after spending about 20 holy power, which is like 7 spender casts. Which is, it's not bad. I think it should last about like 30-ish seconds maybe. It would take to generate that much. But my main concern for this covenant is, first and foremost, the tooltip. On the tooltip, it says that it affects your party members. So the question is, does that mean 5 people, just your 5 people in your party, or does that mean raid-wide? You would assume it's raid-wide because it's an aura, but who knows at this point. It's still early, so tooltips are still kind of not fully accurate. Like, for example, we think the 1% cooldown recovery is probably just a filler until they actually figure out what they want to do with that one, because 1% is super low. I will say, though, that the aura I think is super cool just because you have full control over it. You can decide when to swap it just by spending your holy power. That also could be a bad thing, because that could mean you could sit in Aura of Summer, which is the raid-wide damage increase, for the entire duration of like Lust or people's cooldowns to min-max your damage in your raid, which is definitely something people would do at high-level raiding where damage is super tight. And that would mean you would not be able to spend holy power, which would definitely gimp your healing, just so you got that raid-wide damage increase. And it's not going to be something that's going to be very fun, but you know, it's an interesting possibility that we won't know until we get to test the aura. And there's a bunch of question marks too. Like, we need to know if taking this aura means that you can't have Devo active, or like if the cycles will still cycle, or if the auras will still cycle while you're using Devo. So for example, you get to like Summer and Autumn, which are like the two, or not Autumn, sorry, Summer and Spring, which are like the 2 good auras. Like, and then you could swap to your Aura of Seasons to gain those 2 effects, and then potentially once you get to like Winter, which is like the enemy attack speed one, you could swap back to Devo, and then you could sit in Devo until you swap back to Summer. And if that worked that way, that'd be super cool. And that'd be super good. So you didn't have to make use of those shitty auras, and you could still cycle them without having to be in the Aura of Summer or Aura of Seasons. I think time will tell how good it actually is, but we just need more information, more testing. I don't think I could really rank them right now based on how good I think they are until we get more more info on them, but I think in terms of like how fun they are and maybe like using my brain to just kind of guess how good they could be, I think Night Fae might be the best. I think then Necro Lord. Necro Lord I'm basing mainly on fun. Night Fae I'm basing mainly on potential. Then Kiri and then Venthyr. I think looking at what feels good. Overall, I'm pretty happy with what they did to the class. I'm pretty happy with Holy Power, and I think that generating Holy Power feels smooth and it flows naturally. I think all the instant cast abilities, Holy Shock, Light of Dawn, World of Glory, feel super nice, and I like those spenders being instant cast. I'm kind of hoping that Holy Prism will make a comeback just because that's a super fun ability, and I think it's on a row right now that could definitely see some play. And I've been playing it in dungeons as you'll see dungeon, and it definitely feels good. I think our talent tree is pretty good as well. I think there are multiple rooms where you can make a case for different talents for different situations. And you're going to see a lot less cookie cutter and more variety in their talents. For example, obviously the Holy Prism row is the first one that comes to mind. Holy Prism, Saved by the Light. I forget what the third one is off the top of my head. Judgment of Light. I think that's a row where you could see all three of them potentially played. Some of them being more fun than other. Obviously, Holy Prism would be my preference, but others could definitely potentially be good. I think in terms of what I would like to change for the class, 100% the biggest thing that I would like to see changed is spenders. I feel like spenders need to feel like spenders. When you dump resources into abilities, the abilities should feel good and they should feel noticeable. I should press Word of Glory and I should see my tank or my DPS's HP bar like increase. Whereas right now I press it and their HP bar doesn't fucking move, like I said earlier. It almost feels like it's not worth the GCD most of the time. I also would like to see increased spell coefficient to Glimmer. I think the talent as it stands isn't nearly as good as its other options, and I think a slight increase would be good. Like, don't get me wrong, I don't want Glimmer to be the only option. I'm kind of stale of, or I'm kind of bored of its playstyle. But I think where it currently stands, it's almost unplayable without more stats. So I think a slight increase to its spell coefficient would help it out. Also, Consecrate CD. This is a weird one, but it scales with haste, but it has a 12-second cooldown right now, which in BFA we would replace it constantly moving from pack to pack, or if we had a failure GCD, we would just replace it so we didn't have to replace it really in our next couple GCDs. But right now, when you can only drop it every 12 seconds, it does not feel good in Mythic Plus, and definitely would not feel good in Raid when around a lot, or you're going from target to target or pack to pack, and you have to wait to drop it constantly. I don't think that's going to be good. Maybe they just want to punish people more for dropping it at a bad time, but I think its cooldown should definitely just be lower. It would just feel a lot smoother. I'm sure other things are going to come to my mind as I play the class more and more, but throughout the early alpha stages, this is kind of the impression I've gotten. The first 6 or 7 dungeons I've ran. There's probably other things, like I said, that it will find, but I'll probably make a video in the future as stuff more changes. Overall, I'm pretty happy with the direction Paladin has gone, since Glimmer has definitely gotten pretty stale after playing it for multiple years, but I think the class has a lot of potential and will definitely remain a staple in high ends of rating, and probably Mythic Plus as well, with Shield of the Righteousness being strong for AoE. Alright, I think that does it for this video, guys. If you made it this far, I appreciate you. If there's anything specific you'd like to see from Holy Paladin or other healers in general on the alpha, let me know in the comments and I can try to make a video about it. And I appreciate you guys watching.